Welcome back. Now, the forthcoming 2023 presidential election, like other elections since 1999 in Nigeria, has been characterized by endorsements of some presidential candidates by prominent individuals. Now, the open endorsement of the presidential candidate of Labour Party, Peter Obi, by former President Olusegun Obasanjo has elicited reactions from the presidential candidates of the APC, the PDP, and of course the NNPP. Back in September, the leader of the Afenifere, Ayo Adebanjo, had announced in a press conference that the group had decided to back the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, for equity and inclusiveness. In a similar fashion, the Ijaw national leader and convener of PANDEF, Edwin Clark, including the governor of Benue State, one of the aggrieved PDP G5 governors, Samuel Otom, have endorsed Peter Obi as well for the presidency. Now, the question is, are these endorsements actually important, and would they actually decide the outcome of the coming presidential election? Joining me to discuss this is political affairs analyst Jide Ojo. He joins us from Abuja. Mr. Ojo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. What do you make of these endorsements? Just how important are they?
Well, it's a culture that is associated with politics globally as a way of mobilizing support as well as to market individual candidates. So we have high-profile individual, both politically exposed, captains of industry, religious leaders, traditional rulers, even media houses endorsing candidates before elections. So it's a culture that is time-honored and not peculiar to Nigeria. In fact, if you go to US ahead of every major elections, particularly the presidential elections, you get these broadcast stations endorsing their preferred candidates and former presidents and all of that. So for us in Nigeria, endorsement may have its own value, but actually it would be very misleading to take endorsement for victory at the poll. Because there are two different things. Somebody can endorse you, and yet you may not win. You may not win. What the endorsement does is that it improves your image. As is said in local parlance, it's for the optics. The optics looks good if you are endorsed by a former head of state or by a former president, or by a religious leader, or by a traditional ruler. But remember, Goodluck Jonathan had many endorsements in 2015. He has endorsements, but he lost the election. And in 2019, Obasanjo even endorsed a different political party apart from APC and PDP. He said he was mobilizing the third force, and I think he adopted the ADC as the third force in 2019. But ADC didn't even have any significant showing. So endorsement has its own positive rub-off on any candidate, but it's not sufficient to win elections. More so from somebody who may not also have some credibility quotient in the minds of people. Because as it were now, people are questioning the performance of Obasanjo in the 8 years he was in government, the mismanagement of the resources, the autocracy with which he demonstrated in governance, the lack of internal party democracy within the PDP and all of that. So if somebody like that who does not have democratic credentials is endorsing you, it's just like what Donald Trump did in US during the midterm elections, where most of the candidates that he endorsed end up losing the elections.
But let's talk particularly about this Obasanjo's endorsement. Did it come to you as a surprise?
No, it didn't surprise me, given the fact that the former head of state and president always want to break. He wants to be in the news. Obasanjo enjoys clear-light. He enjoys limelight. He has been out of power since 2007, which is over a decade ago, and he wants to remain relevant. So he needs to do something out of the ordinary. And if he doesn't do this, definitely he will not be in the news. He will not be. We will not be discussing him today. If all he does is to do a secret memo to the president or to the candidate, if he does his endorsement behind the scene without public knowledge, if he shows his interest at the Council of State meeting, then definitely it will not be in the news. But you know, he has become a famous letter writer. Maybe he missed presidency. He also missed being the UN Secretary General, which he contested and lost. But in spite of the fact that it doesn't come to me as a surprise, I must also hasten to say that he has spoken very well. The 6-page letter has a lot of food for thought, and it's in sync with my own take about the next presidential election. However, where I departed from him is that his endorsement of P2B is coming a bit late. I had expected, and this I mentioned on a broadcast station yesterday, that I would have expected that when the southern governors were all rallying support for a southern presidency in 2023, it should have been the arrowhead of that. You understand? It should have been the one, the arrowhead, the mastermind, the leading force to make demand for that with certain justifications. And if he does that, what I was expecting him to have done is to say, look, in 1998, the leaders of thought in Nigeria, the political leaders, the military elite, were all approached to compensate for the death of Obasanjo in 1993. I mean, death of Abiola in 1993. And they all agreed to allow Yoruba to be the next president after Abdulsalami Abubakar. Remember, you are a political reporter, DG. It was that political engineering that made us to have only 2 presidential candidates in 1999, where Olufalaye became the joint candidate of Alliance for Democracy and All People's Party, APP, yes. And Obasanjo became the candidate of the People's Democratic Party. And either way, a Yoruba man became the president. If Obasanjo has championed this kind of political engineering, all this 6-page letter reminding us of the civil war of over 50 years ago, and the marginalization of Igbos in the political structure of Nigeria and all of that would not have been necessary, because he could have made this persuasion to his colleagues, his fellow brothers who have been former presidents. And if they had worked very hard, all they just needed to do is to get APC and PDP to field somebody of Southeast extraction as their presidential candidate. And today we would have been possibly seeing P2B and somebody else being the frontline candidate, in which case in 2023, come next month, we will have had an Igbo president in waiting, or president-elect. But now, after all the 18 political parties have chosen their respective candidates, you are now making this persuasion as if others are not relevant or they have not paid their dues, and making emotional blackmail of having an Igbo president. It's good for the optics, like I said. I didn't actually expect him to endorse anybody else. given the fact that there is lingering beef between Obasanjo and Tinubu
And
over their
Obasanjo and Atiku as
early
well.
2000 beef. Then Atiku had also not been completely forgiven for what he made Obasanjo to go through in the lead up to 2003 elections. So he definitely have access to grind with the
All
Atiku
right.
and Tinubu.
Let's leave the Obasanjo endorsement now, and let's talk about, you did allude to that when you were speaking, this issue of endorsement now from religious leaders. I'm just wondering, is it something good for religious leaders? Because we're seeing that now. We're seeing, for instance, religious leaders, especially among Christians. I mean, we can't deny that, especially among Christians, coming out, pastors coming out, pastors, reverends, and what have you, coming out to openly declare and endorse, particular candidates now. Is that something good for, especially when it comes to a religious setting? Because I'm just wondering, in a religious organization, you would definitely have members of different political parties, different political persuasions, and all of that. So, would it be nice for the head of religious bodies, whose members cut across, to come out and say they are endorsing a particular candidate?
I share your sentiments, DG, and I also worry. I worry about this endorsement by religious leaders, even by by traditional rulers. These are elder statesmen, people or leaders of thought that one would expect they will exercise a high level of circumspection in all that they do. I take exception to the religious leaders endorsing a particular candidate because it can backfire. It has backfired before. Recall that in 2019, there were notable religious leaders who endorsed Atiku Abubakar against Buhari. And at the end of the day, what has happened? Buhari won, despite they are not endorsing Buhari in 2019. I don't want to mention names, but you know them. You are a seasoned and veteran broadcaster. So, and they have continued in 2023 with their endorsements and prophecies. And with prophecies, you also need to be very careful. We have had pastors saying they are the next president of Nigeria, even when they lost the primaries of their party. Yeah, I mean, how then do you want to be the president? You said God has shown you that you are the next president of Nigeria. Then you threw your hat in the ring and you contested the primary and you didn't even win one vote. Is it that God is lying or that you didn't see well? We have also seen those who have said that God told them that so person will be the next president. We saw that a lot, even in the lead up to 2020 presidential election in US, where some religious leaders, even in Nigeria, were making predictions about US presidential election, saying that Donald Trump was going to win. At the end of the day, they were all put to shame. I recall a popular footballer turned pastor saying that God has revealed to him that Donald Trump was going to win that US presidential election of 2020 November. But today, can anybody take him serious if he says that God has shown him who is going to be the next president of Nigeria? This is why they need to exercise a lot of discretion, a lot of circumspection, because if your own opinion is published or announced as the mind of God will dissociate himself from you, and you will be humiliated. And that is the danger of, I like Pastor Enoch Adejare Adeboye. He said, look, the reason why I don't endorse and why I don't vote is that I have a huge congregation where all political parties are represented.
Exactly.
So if I vote for a particular candidate I will be seen to be to love that person more than others who may even be contributing to the church growth more than the person who I endorse. So people like that have applied wisdom in handling politicians who troop to their camp or to their religious worship centers for endorsement to say, look, I pray for you, you will succeed.
Exactly.
And if I wish you well. But for people who stick out their neck and say, God told them you are the next president, God told them, I have said this at a church where I was invited as a resource person to talk to them about 2023 election. This was sometimes in September, October last year. And one of the pastors of the church was asking me this same question. And I said, look, I do not support open declaration of support for any of the candidates. It's dangerous. What if that person did not win? How will you be viewed? People will start labeling you as a fake prophet, a fake bishop, or somebody who is not trustworthy, or somebody who is mercantilist. Maybe you have received money, that's why you endorse and all of that. So it's dangerous for religious leaders and even by extension for traditional rulers also stick out their neck to endorse a particular candidate at the expense of others.
And I think you really have a strong point there when it comes to traditional rulers as well, because, you know, almost every election cycle, it appears it's getting worse. Traditional leaders just throw themselves into the fray and openly endorse candidates. And
I mean, look at what happened in Osun State. In Osun, where the traditional rulers were struggling, competing with themselves to endorse either Oyetola or Adeleke. At the end of the day, those who endorse Oyetola now, where are they facing? How do they look in the public glare? I recall the Ataoja of Osogbo was threatened that if Oyetola wins, that he will be dethroned. So he was lucky that
he was very lucky. He was very lucky because he campaigned openly for the candidate of the PDP.
Because that could have led to a political chaos. And you know that's why these elder statesmen, even if they are young in age, it is believed that they are on the throne of an elder, and they need to exercise caution and be less exuberant. Let them not endorse, but bless every politician who comes to them and wish them well, and that ends it. Not that you start granting press interview to say, this is my own beloved or anointed or preferred candidate. What if there are dynamics in politics that can change? Even today, what have also happened, and I did mention this in my column in The Punch this week, where I also mentioned opinion polling. You see a lot of opinion polling giving victory to a particular candidate, even when majority of the respondents said they are undecided. So if they are undecided, you have 54 or 56% undecided, 44% responded, and you are saying, oh, this is the person who is there. Things do change. 24 hours is a long time in politics. But I understand those opinion polling agencies, they are in need for money. They are business people, and whoever comes to them, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. But one has to be very wary about believing this opinion polling. This also has become part of our political culture, and we have seen that even in US, where they have sophisticated state-of-the-art equipment to conduct opinion polling, it does not always come true at every election. So one has to be very wary and less complacent with all this endorsement and poll surveys and all of that.
All right, Chidojo, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you so very much for your time.
My pleasure. Best of the year.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
That's how much we can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.